The old version of you was never meant to be your final form. There comes a point when comfort starts costing too much. You notice it in the quiet moments when your day feels full, but your life feels stuck. You feel the pressure of unfinished goals. You feel the weight of habits that no longer help you. You feel the pull to become more disciplined, more honest, and more serious about your own growth. This is not about becoming a different person overnight. It is about facing the parts of yourself that have kept you small and choosing to move beyond them. It is about building daily habits that protect your future. It is about learning how to handle discomfort without running from it. It is about challenging the beliefs that keep your potential trapped and replacing them with actions that build real strength. If you have ever felt tired of repeating the same patterns, this video is for you. If you know deep down that you are capable of more, this video is for you. Stay with it, because each chapter will take you deeper into the kind of change that lasts. Not quick motivation, not empty advice. Real guidance for becoming someone stronger, calmer, and harder to break. Chapter 1. Force yourself to confront your outdated identity. There comes a moment in every life when the old version of you starts feeling too small. It may still be familiar. It may still feel safe. It may even still get you through the day. But deep inside, you know it is no longer enough for the life you want to build. That old version may have helped you survive a hard season. It may have protected you from disappointment. It may have kept you quiet when you needed to stay calm. It may have taught you how to avoid pain. But it also may have taught you how to stay stuck. And if you are honest with yourself, you already know that growth cannot happen while you keep defending the same identity that once held you back. This is where real change begins, not with a perfect plan, not with a sudden burst of energy, not with a magical moment when everything becomes easy. Real change begins when you stop pretending that the person you used to be is the same person you might remain. That is a hard truth, because identity feels personal. It feels close. It feels like the story you have lived so far. But the truth is simple. You are not required to stay loyal to every version of yourself. You are allowed to outgrow the habits that once defined you. You are allowed to leave behind the attitudes that no longer serve your future. You are allowed to become more disciplined, more honest, and more serious about your own life. Many people say they want change, but still protect the parts of themselves that need to die. They want better results, but keep the same weak routines. They want peace, but keep feeding chaos. They want confidence, but keep rehearsing self-doubt. They want a stronger life, but refuse to face the version of themselves that keeps choosing comfort over growth. This is why so many people stay trapped for years, not because they cannot change, but because they avoid the uncomfortable moment when they must look at their current identity and say, "This is not who I want to remain." That moment is painful because it requires honesty. It asks you to stop romanticizing your excuses. It asks you to stop defending habits that weaken you. It asks you to stop calling fear by softer names. Fear is fear. Laziness is laziness. Pride is pride. Procrastination is procrastination. And if you want a different life, then you must be willing to name things clearly. You cannot heal what you refuse to face. You cannot improve what you keep justifying. You cannot outgrow a weak identity while still using it as your shelter. The old version of you may have been built in a season of pain. Maybe you learned to stay silent because speaking up once caused trouble. Maybe you learned to please everyone because rejection hurt too much. Maybe you learned to avoid responsibility because responsibility once felt overwhelming. Maybe you learned to doubt yourself because people around you made you question your value. There is understanding in all of that. You do not have to hate your past to move beyond it. But understanding your past is not the same as living inside it. Your history can explain you. It should not imprison you. A person who is serious about growth must learn the difference between compassion and excuse-making. Compassion says your pain was real and your struggle mattered. Excuse-making says your pain should now control your future. Compassion helps you heal. Excuse-making keeps you weak. Compassion tells the truth without shame. Excuse-making hides the truth, so you can avoid effort. If you want to outgrow the old version of you, then you need compassion for what formed you and courage for what comes next. One of the most powerful first steps is to observe yourself without distortion. Sit with your life as it is. Do not exaggerate the bad. Do not minimize the problem. Look at your patterns with calm and discipline. What do you do when no one is watching? What do you avoid? What do you repeat? What do you keep promising yourself and never deliver? What conversations do you postpone? What habits drain your energy? What choices keep creating the same results? This kind of honesty can be uncomfortable because it strips away the excuses, but discomfort is useful when it leads to truth. If you want to grow, then you must become the kind of person who can look at his own behavior without collapsing into shame. Shame says you are broken beyond repair. Truth says you are responsible for what happens next. Shame wants you to hide. Truth wants you to improve. Shame makes you dramatic. Truth makes you disciplined. Every day you must choose truth over drama. Truth is not cold. Truth is freeing. It tells you exactly where you stand so you can move forward with purpose. Confronting your outdated identity begins with a simple question. Who are you pretending to be that no longer fits your life? Maybe you still act like the person who does not need structure, when in reality your life is suffering because of too much chaos. Maybe you still act like the person who needs motivation first, when your life actually needs consistency first. Maybe you still act like the person who has time later, when your future is being shaped by the choices you delay today. Maybe you still act like the person who can keep carrying old wounds without dealing with them. That version of you may have helped you cope. But coping is not the same thing as becoming. A mature life requires a mature identity. And a mature identity is not built on feelings alone. It is built on repeated actions that match the future you want. You cannot think your way into a new self if your daily behavior keeps rehearsing the old one. Your identity is shaped by what you repeatedly do. If you repeatedly sleep when you should act, then you become the person who delays. If you repeatedly complain but never solve, then you become the person who resists responsibility. If you repeatedly say you want more but never train your mind or habits, then you become the person who only wants comfort. That is the hard truth. Repetition shapes identity more than intention ever will. This is why change must become practical. It is not enough to say you are evolving, you must show it. And the first proof of change is often small. You wake up when you said you would wake up. You keep your promise even when nobody checks. You stop talking about the same weakness as if it is your personality. You clean up one area of your life that you have neglected. You finish one task that you have avoided. You have one honest conversation. You say no to one thing that drains you. These small acts matter because they teach your mind that you are no longer an obedient servant to your old habits. There is a difference between being aware of your old identity and being loyal to it. Awareness says, I notice this pattern in myself. Loyalty says, I keep feeding it. You need awareness without loyalty. You need to see the pattern clearly and then stop serving it. If the old version of you was reactive, then the new version must be deliberate. If the old version was easily distracted, then the new version must be focused. If the old version wanted approval from everyone, then the new version must respect truth more than applause. If the old version protected comfort, then the new version must protect growth. One reason people stay stuck is that they keep waiting to feel ready before they act. But readiness is often built through action. You do not always feel ready to have difficult conversations. You do not always feel ready to wake up early. You do not always feel ready to take responsibility. You do not always feel ready to face your weaknesses. That is normal. Discipline begins where comfort ends. If you only do what feels ready, then you will live at the mercy of mood. And a life ruled by mood is a life ruled by instability. Stoic thinking reminds us that what matters is not how you feel before action. What matters is what you choose when feelings are uneven, When you confront your outdated identity, you may feel resistance. That resistance is not proof that you are doing something wrong. Often it is proof that you are touching something real. The mind resists what threatens the familiar. Even painful patterns can feel safe because they are known. This is why people stay in cycles that drain them. The cycle is painful but predictable. Growth is better but uncertain. The human mind often confuses familiarity with safety. Your task is to break that confusion. Not everything familiar is good. Not everything uncomfortable is bad. Some of the best changes in life begin with discomfort. The old version of you may also be protected by self-talk that sounds reasonable. You may hear thoughts like "this is just how I am," or "I have always been this way," or "I work better under pressure," or "I will change when life settles down." These thoughts are dangerous because they sound practical while quietly protecting stagnation. They sound like explanation, but they often function as permission. A strong person does not let every passing thought become a law. He examines it, he tests it, he asks whether it leads to growth or merely protects old behavior. A practical way to confront your outdated identity is to write down the patterns that keep repeating in your life. Do not write a story, write facts. When do you avoid work? When do you become passive? When do you lose focus? When do you overreact? When do you shut down? When do you say yes when you mean no? When do you promise more than you can deliver? When do you abandon your own plans? Facts bring clarity. Clarity creates responsibility. Responsibility creates change. Many people want transformation but avoid the clear view because clarity removes hiding places. Yet hiding places are exactly what keep you weak. Another important step is to ask what the old version of you has cost you. Not in a dramatic way, in a real way. What opportunities were lost because you delayed? What respect was damaged because you were unreliable? What peace was broken because you stayed in habits that made your mind noisy? What confidence was weakened because you did not keep your word to yourself? This is not about beating yourself up. It is about seeing the actual cost of staying the same. People often change only when the cost of staying the same becomes clear enough to matter. You need to see it clearly enough that denial becomes impossible. Then ask a better question. What would the next version of you do today? Not someday. Today. The answer should be practical. He would finish what he started. He would stop arguing with reality. He would reduce the noise in his day. He would eat his responsibilities before he ate his excuses. He would keep his mind steady. He would take the first step even if the full path is not visible. He would speak with more honesty. He would protect his time. He would stop making every problem about emotion and start solving what can be solved. This is where daily discipline becomes powerful. You do not outgrow the old version of you in one big dramatic leap. You outgrow it through repeated decisions, one decision at a time, one morning at a time, one habit at a time, one honest choice at a time. When you keep doing the right thing while your old identity tries to pull you back, then you are proving something to yourself. You are proving that you are not a prisoner of your past. You are proving that your future matters more than your comfort. There will be days when the old version of you becomes loud again. It will whisper that you are doing too much. It will remind you of your limits. It will urge you to return to the easier path. It will tell you that one skipped effort will not matter. It will try to negotiate with you. This is where you must be firm, not angry. Firm. The goal is not to hate yourself into change. The goal is to lead yourself with enough strength that weakness no longer gets the final word. You do not need a harsh inner voice. You need a clear one. Clear self-leadership sounds like this. No, I am not returning to that pattern. No, I do not need to argue with my own standards. No, I will not delay what I already know I must do. No, I will not make temporary comfort more important than long-term peace. No, I will not keep feeding habits that weaken my future. This kind of self-talk is steady. It is not dramatic. It is not emotional. It is grounded. It helps you become someone who can rely on himself. A meaningful life requires self-respect, and self-respect is built through kept promises. Each time you honor a small promise to yourself, you strengthen your identity. Each time you break one, you weaken it. That is why the smallest habits matter. If you say you will read for 15 minutes, then read for 15 minutes. If you say you will clean your room, then clean your room. If you say you will stop scrolling for an hour, then stop scrolling for an hour. These acts might look ordinary, but they are not ordinary in their effect. They teach your nervous system that your word means something. The old version of you often survives on inconsistency. He starts strong and fades quickly. He gets inspired and then slips. He plans well and then ignores the plan. He talks about discipline, but avoids it when the moment arrives. To outgrow him, you need to become boringly consistent. That means showing up without needing a special mood. It means doing what is needed even when no one is impressed. It means valuing progress over intensity. It means choosing rhythm over drama. A stable life is rarely built by people who only act when they feel inspired. It is built by people who are willing to work when the feeling is absent. As you confront your outdated identity, you may discover that some parts of it were built to protect you from pain. That deserves respect. But protection can become a prison if it never changes. A person who was once hurt may begin by hiding. Later he must learn to stand. A person who once lacked support may begin by surviving alone. Later he must learn to trust wisely. A person who once feared failure may begin by avoiding risk. Later he must learn that growth requires exposure. The protective self is not evil. It is unfinished. Your job is to finish the work. You do not need to become a different human being in order to grow. You need to become more honest, more disciplined, and more willing to change your behavior when your current behavior is producing a weak life. Growth is not about becoming fake. It is about becoming real. The real you is not the one that hides behind every excuse. The real you is the one who can tell the truth and act on it. The real you is the one who can admit weakness without surrendering to it. The real you is the one who can feel discomfort and still do the right thing. There is also power in removing identity statements that trap you. Stop saying, "I am just like this," if what follows is a weakness you refuse to correct. Stop saying, "I am bad at discipline," if you have never trained discipline. Stop saying, "I am not a morning person," if you have not committed to becoming one. Stop saying, "I cannot change," if you have not made a serious attempt. These statements sound harmless, but they often become self-fulfilling. Words shape expectations. Expectations shape behavior. Choose your words carefully because they are building your future even when you are not paying attention. A better identity statement sounds like this. I am learning to be more disciplined. I am becoming more honest with myself. I am choosing better habits. I am not staying loyal to what weakens me. I can change through repeated action. I do not need perfection to improve. I need persistence. This is the mindset of a person who is serious about transformation. It is calm. It is realistic. It is powerful because it is rooted in action rather than fantasy. At some point, you will need to make peace with the fact that your old self may resist your growth. That resistance does not mean you are failing. It means you are changing. Growth often creates friction. Your former habits want to survive. Your new standards want to rise. That tension is normal. Do not panic when it appears. Do not interpret it as a reason to quit. Interpret it as proof that your life is moving in a new direction. Many people mistake resistance for failure and return to old patterns too soon. Do not do that. Stay steady. Keep going. Let discomfort be part of the process. The moment you start confronting your outdated identity honestly is the moment your life begins to reorganize around truth. You begin to see what matters. You stop wasting as much energy on appearances. You stop performing for people who do not live your life. You stop carrying habits just because they are familiar. You start becoming more selective with your time, your thoughts, and your commitments. That selectiveness is not selfish. It is necessary. A life of purpose requires boundaries. You cannot outgrow the old self while still giving everything in you to what keeps it alive. You may not notice the change every day. Growth is often slow from the inside. But over time the signs become obvious. You recover faster from setbacks. You think more clearly. You waste less time. You trust yourself more. You speak with more honesty. You feel less need to prove yourself constantly. You become calmer under pressure. You become less attached to approval. You begin to value your own standards. That is how the old self loses power. Not by one dramatic moment, but by repeated evidence that a stronger self now exists. There is dignity in becoming the kind of person who no longer needs the old version for comfort. You can appreciate where you came from without returning there. You can respect your past without obeying it. You can understand your weaknesses without worshipping them. That is maturity. That is self-mastery. That is how a human being begins to take ownership of his life. So today, do not simply admire the idea of change. Confront what in you has become outdated. Look honestly at the habits that keep your life small. Look honestly at the beliefs that keep your effort weak. Look honestly at the identity you have been defending and ask whether it still deserves your loyalty. Then make the decision to outgrow it. Not tomorrow, not after things get easier. Now, start with one choice, one honest choice, one disciplined choice, one choice that your future self would thank you for. Then make another choice tomorrow, and another after that. This is how a new identity is built. Not through wishful thinking, not through motivational bursts that fade by noon. It is built through steady action that proves you are no longer willing to remain the same. The old version of you will not disappear because you talked about change. It will lose power because you stopped feeding it. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you weaken the old identity. Every time you choose truth over denial, you weaken the old identity. Every time you choose responsibility over delay, you weaken the old identity. And every time you do this with calm determination, you strengthen the person you are becoming. Do not wait for life to force this lesson on you through regret. Learn it now while you still have time to shape your path. The choice is before you in this very moment. Stay attached to the version of you that kept you small, or begin the work of becoming larger, stronger, and more honest. There is no perfect transition. There is only the decision to begin and the courage to continue. Be brave enough to see yourself clearly. Be disciplined enough to act on what you see. Be humble enough to admit what must change. Be strong enough to let the old version of you die without a fight. What rises after that will not be a fantasy. It will be a life built on truth. And truth is where real power begins. Chapter 2. Build daily habits that replace old limitations. Your life changes when your daily habits become stronger than your old limits. Most people do not stay trapped because they lack talent. They stay trapped because their days keep repeating the same patterns. A weak morning creates a weak start. A distracted afternoon creates wasted time. An undisciplined night creates regret the next day. Then the cycle continues until a person begins to believe that this is just how life is. But life is shaped by what you repeat. The habits you keep are slowly building the person you will become. This is why daily habits matter so much. They are not small. They are not simple in their effect. They decide whether your future grows or stays stuck. A single good habit may seem ordinary on the surface, but over time it changes your thoughts, your confidence, your energy, and your results. The same is true for bad habits. A small weakness repeated every day becomes a heavy burden. This is why growth must become practical. You do not need a perfect life. You need a better rhythm. Old limitations live inside routine. They survive through repetition. If you always react the same way, you keep the same result. If you always avoid work when it feels hard, your mind learns to escape pressure. If you always delay important tasks, your life becomes a place of unfinished things. If you always wait for motivation, your discipline never grows strong enough to lead you. So the answer is not to wish harder. The answer is to build better habits with intention. Start with the first hour of your day. Many people lose the day before it even begins because they wake up and immediately surrender control. They reach for their phone before they reach for their purpose. They let noise enter before clarity has a chance to form. They move into the day without direction. That is how old limitations stay alive. A better life begins when you decide that the first part of your day belongs to you. Wake up and sit still for a moment. Breathe, drink water, clear your mind. Decide what kind of person you want to be that day. This is not about looking busy. It is about becoming deliberate. The most powerful habits are often the plain ones. Sleep at a steady time. Wake up at a steady time. Finish what you start. Write down your tasks. Read something useful. Move your body. These things may look basic, but basic is not weak. Basic is the foundation. A person with a strong foundation does not fall apart easily when life becomes difficult. If you want to replace old limitations, you must first identify what those limitations look like in daily life. Maybe your limitation is procrastination. Maybe it is inconsistency. Maybe it is self-doubt. Maybe it is emotional reactivity. Maybe it is laziness disguised as tiredness. Maybe it is the habit of starting strong and fading fast. Once you know the pattern, you can stop treating it like part of your personality. It is not your identity. It is a pattern. And patterns can be changed. To change a pattern, you need a replacement. Do not only focus on what must stop. Focus on what must take its place. If you stop scrolling without replacing it, you will likely return to it. If you stop complaining without replacing it, the mind may look for another form of escape. If you stop avoiding work without replacing it, your energy may fall back into old comfort. A habit is stronger when it gives your mind a clear next step. So replace the old limitation with a new action. Replace avoidance with a 2-minute start. Replace chaos with a written plan. Replace doubt with one small act of proof. Replace fear with preparation. Replace scattered thinking with a quiet moment of focus. This is where people often make a mistake. They try to change everything at once. They set huge goals and expect immediate transformation. Then they fail to maintain the pressure and think they are weak. But the problem is often not weakness. The problem is overload. Real change is more stable when it is built in layers. Choose one habit first. Build it until it feels steady. Then add another. A person becomes powerful through consistency, not through speed. There is great value in making your habits visible. Write them down. Keep track of them. Use a simple notebook if needed. What gets measured gets respected. When you see your actions in front of you, it becomes harder to lie to yourself. You begin to notice patterns. You see the days you were disciplined. You see the days you gave in. That awareness is useful because it turns vague hopes into real data. And when life becomes clear, improvement becomes possible. Daily habits should not only make you productive, they should make you stronger in character. That means your habits must train patience, honesty, and self-respect. For example, when you say you will do something at a certain time, do it. When you say you will stop at a certain time, stop. When you say you will not return to a bad pattern, keep your word. Every kept promise builds trust with yourself. Every broken promise weakens that trust. A strong life cannot be built on a weak relationship with yourself. The old version of you may like comfort more than progress. That version may look for the easiest path whenever possible. It may avoid discomfort, because discomfort often demands growth. But your new habits must teach you to stay present when things feel inconvenient. That does not mean forcing yourself into reckless pressure. It means learning to tolerate small discomforts without surrendering. Wake up even when you feel slow. Begin the task even when it feels heavy. Stay with the hard conversation instead of running from it. Finish the final part of what matters instead of quitting early. These actions train resilience. A practical habit that can change your life is the habit of daily planning. Before the day gets noisy, choose your important tasks. Not every task matters equally. Some tasks move your life forward, some tasks just fill time. Learn to tell the difference. Ask yourself what actually matters today. What action would make this day meaningful? What must be done before distraction takes over? When you plan with honesty, you reduce confusion. When you reduce confusion, you reduce mental fatigue. Another useful habit is a daily reset. At the end of the day, review what happened. What did you do well? Where did you drift? What needs correction tomorrow? This is not about punishment. It is about learning. A person who reflects daily becomes wiser faster than a person who never stops to examine himself. Honest reflection helps you see your habits as they really are. It teaches you to improve without self-hatred and without excuses. Your habits should also protect your attention. Modern life is full of noise. A limited mind becomes a distracted mind when it is pulled in too many directions. If you want to replace old limitations, guard your attention like something valuable. Put your phone away when you need focus. Limit pointless noise. Create moments of quiet. Read with intention. Think before reacting. Attention is energy. When you waste it, you weaken your growth. When you protect it, you strengthen your mind. Do not wait for mood to support your habits. Mood changes. Energy rises and falls. Some days feel easier than others. That is normal. But habits must stand above mood if they are going to change your life. This is where discipline becomes a gift. Discipline says, I will keep going, even when the feeling is not there. Discipline is not cold. It is loyal. It keeps your future alive when your temporary emotions try to distract you. You will notice that strong habits begin to change how you see yourself. This is one of the greatest rewards. When you live with consistency, self-respect grows. You stop feeling like someone who promises and fails. You become someone who acts. You stop being controlled by random impulses. You become steadier. That steadiness gives you a quiet kind of confidence. Not loud confidence, not fake confidence, real confidence. The kind that comes from evidence. At first, building new habits may feel slow. That is fine. Do not confuse slow with useless. Water does not break stone in one strike. It changes things by staying present. Your habits work the same way. What matters is not the intensity of one day. What matters is the direction of many days. Every repetition teaches your mind a new standard. Every small victory weakens the old limitation a little more. There will be days when the old pattern returns. That does not mean you failed. It means the work is still in progress. Correct quickly. Do not dramatize it. Do not turn one weak choice into a story of defeat. Return to the habit. Return to the routine. Return to the standard. Growth is not about never slipping. Growth is about refusing to remain down. A life built on strong habits becomes more peaceful over time. There is less inner conflict, less regret, less confusion, more order, more control, more trust in yourself. That peace is one of the clearest signs that you are outgrowing your old limits. You begin to feel that your life is no longer being decided by impulse alone. You are shaping it with purpose. So begin today with one habit that proves you are serious. Make your bed, write your plan, read for 10 minutes, walk for 20 minutes, finish the task you have been avoiding. Turn off the noise for a while and listen to your own thoughts. Then do it again tomorrow and the next day. This is how a new life is built. Not by wishing for strength, by practicing it. Your future does not need a perfect version of you. It needs a consistent one. It needs a person who is willing to replace old limits with daily discipline. It needs a person who can trust small choices because those choices are stacking up into a stronger character. You do not have to change everything at once. You only have to begin. Then repeat. Then improve. Then repeat again. That is how the old limits lose their power. That is how a new identity becomes real. That is how ordinary days become the ground where your better life is built. Chapter 3. Reject excuses and choose disciplined growth daily. Excuses lose their power the moment you decide that your future matters more than your comfort. Every life that rises to a higher level reaches a point where excuses must be exposed for what they are. They may sound reasonable in the moment. They may even feel protective. They can arrive dressed as logic, tiredness, bad timing, or unfair circumstances. But when you listen closely, excuses do one thing very well. They keep you from becoming the person you know you can be. That is why disciplined growth begins when you stop negotiating with the habits that hold you back. It begins when you refuse to let temporary feelings speak louder than long-term purpose. Many people do not fail because they never had potential. They fail because they keep giving their weakness a voice. They say they are too tired. They say they need more time. They say tomorrow will be better. They say life is too busy. They say things will change when stress settles. But life rarely becomes less demanding by itself. Responsibility does not disappear because you feel unprepared. Opportunity does not wait for perfect conditions. Growth begins when you take ownership of your day, even when your mind is looking for an easy way out. A disciplined person does not wait to feel inspired before doing what must be done. He understands that discipline is often built in the moments when inspiration is absent. This is a quiet form of strength. It is not loud. It does not need attention. It simply moves forward. It gets up on time. It finishes the task. It keeps the promise. It does not ask whether the work feels exciting. It asks whether the work matters. That is the difference between a life ruled by excuses and a life ruled by purpose. Excuses are powerful because they can sound like self-care when they are actually self-sabotage. You may tell yourself that you deserve to rest, but what you really mean is that you want to avoid effort. You may say the task can wait, but what you really mean is that you do not want to face discomfort. You may say you need the right mindset first, but what you really mean is that you are waiting for a feeling to rescue you from responsibility. This is why honesty matters. You cannot defeat what you keep disguising. The disciplined person learns to tell the truth quickly. He notices when he is trying to soften a difficult choice. He catches the moment when convenience begins to sound more appealing than growth. He understands that every excuse has a cost. One skipped effort can lead to another. One delayed action can become a pattern. One small surrender can train the mind to keep surrendering. That is how people lose years without noticing it. Not through one huge failure, but through repeated small excuses that slowly shape their character. If you want to grow daily, you must begin by recognizing the types of excuses that appear most often in your life. Some excuses are emotional. They say you are not in the right mood. Some are physical. They say you are too drained to begin. Some are social. They say other people do not understand your struggle. Some are mental. They say you are not ready yet or not naturally disciplined. Some are moral. They say you deserve a break from responsibility because life has been hard. Each one of these can steal your progress if you keep trusting it. Disciplined growth requires a different voice. It says the work matters even when I feel resistance. It says the next step is still available even if I am not fully comfortable. It says progress is built through repeated effort, not occasional intensity. It says I can be honest about my weakness without obeying it. That voice must become stronger than the voice of excuse. The only way that happens is through practice. Every time you choose action over delay, you strengthen that inner voice. One practical way to reject excuses is to shrink the size of the first step. Many people stay stuck because they think growth always has to feel big. It does not. If the task feels heavy, begin with a small action that breaks the mental barrier. Open the book, write the first sentence, put on the shoes, clean one corner, make the call, start the timer. These small acts matter because they interrupt the excuse cycle. Once motion begins, resistance becomes easier to handle. The mind often resists starting far more than it resists continuing. Another useful practice is to remove your favorite excuses before they appear. If you keep telling yourself that you do not have time, then create a fixed time for the important work. If you keep saying you forget, then write it down where you will see it. If you keep saying you get distracted, then reduce the distractions around you. If you keep saying you need energy, then protect your sleep and your routine. Discipline is not only about willpower. It is also about making excuses harder to use. There is also a deeper level to this work. Sometimes excuses are protecting fear. You may not actually be lazy. You may be afraid of failing publicly. You may be afraid of being seen trying and not succeeding right away. You may be afraid of discovering your limits. You may be afraid of doing your best and still facing criticism. These fears are human. but they become dangerous when they are allowed to control behavior. Disciplined growth asks you to act despite uncertainty. It teaches you that courage is not the absence of fear. It is movement in the presence of fear. A strong life is built when you stop requiring perfect conditions to do what is necessary. If you only act when circumstances are ideal, you will spend much of your life waiting. Waiting feels safe, but it is expensive. It costs momentum, it costs confidence, it costs opportunities that never return. The person who chooses discipline daily learns to move even when life is messy. He learns that progress often happens in ordinary conditions, not ideal ones. That lesson changes everything. You do not need to punish yourself to grow. You need to lead yourself. There is a difference. Punishment is emotional and often unstable. Leadership is firm and clear. It says, this is what matters and this is what I will do. It does not shame the self into change. It directs the self toward better behavior. When you lead yourself well, you create trust. When you trust yourself, discipline becomes less of a battle and more of a habit. One way to strengthen disciplined growth is to end the day with accountability. Ask yourself simple questions. Did I keep my word today? Where did I give in? What excuse did I repeat? What action did I avoid? What can I do better tomorrow? These questions keep your mind honest. They prevent self-deception from settling in. A person who reviews his day with truth becomes harder to manipulate from within. He begins to see his choices clearly, and clarity creates strength. Another important habit is to tie your actions to the kind of person you want to become. Do not just ask what you need to do. Ask who you need to be while doing it. If you want to become dependable, then act with reliability. If you want to become focused, then protect your attention. If you want to become resilient, then stay present under pressure. Identity grows through repeated behavior. The more your actions match your values, the less space excuses have to survive. There will be days when you feel low and tired and uncertain. That does not mean discipline has failed. It means discipline must speak louder than mood. A strong person is not someone who never feels resistance. A strong person is someone who does not let resistance make all the decisions. This is where dignity lives. In the ability to keep moving when the mind is offering reasons to stop. The truth is that every excuse weakens the future a little more, while every disciplined choice strengthens it. One creates drift, the other creates direction. One protects the old life, the other builds the new one. And if you keep choosing disciplined growth daily, your life will begin to show the difference. Your confidence will become steadier. Your actions will become cleaner. Your mind will become less scattered. Your results will begin to reflect the seriousness of your effort. So when the excuse appears, do not argue with it for long. Recognize it. Name it. Refuse it. Then move. Your life changes in those moments. Not in theory, not in wishful thinking, in action. The future you want is built by the decisions you make while no one is forcing you. That is where character is formed. That is where strength becomes real. That is where the old pattern loses its grip. Choose discipline today. Choose it again tomorrow. Choose it until it becomes part of how you live. Because the person who learns to reject excuses does not just complete tasks. He becomes harder to break, harder to distract, and far harder to keep small. Chapter 4. Train your mind to welcome uncomfortable change. Growth begins the moment you stop fearing discomfort and start using it as proof that change is happening. Your mind is not naturally built to welcome change. It is built to protect what is familiar. That is why even good change can feel strange at first. A new habit feels awkward. A new standard feels demanding. A new way of thinking can feel heavy because it asks you to leave behind what once felt safe. But if you keep treating discomfort like a warning sign, you will keep missing the exact moments that could transform your life. The mind must be trained to understand that not every uncomfortable feeling is a threat. Some discomfort is simply the sound of growth beginning. Many people avoid change because they think discomfort means something is wrong. They confuse challenge with danger. They confuse effort with failure. They confuse uncertainty with loss. So when life asks them to step higher, they step back. When a better path appears but feels unfamiliar, they retreat to what they know. Yet what they know may be the very thing keeping them small. Comfort can become a trap when it is used to avoid development. A life that never feels uncomfortable may also be a life that never rises very far. Training your mind starts with a decision to stop arguing with reality. Change is part of life. Seasons shift, people shift, expectations shift. Your own understanding must shift too. If you cling too tightly to old routines and old reactions, you begin to treat growth like a disturbance instead of a necessity. But the truth is that every meaningful life requires transition. The person you are today cannot remain exactly the same if you want a stronger tomorrow. That is not a loss. That is the natural cost of becoming more capable. One of the first things you must learn is how to stay calm when change feels uncomfortable. The mind often reacts quickly. It wants certainty before action. It wants guarantees before effort. It wants to know the outcome before it commits. But growth rarely offers that kind of comfort. You often have to move while the path still feels unclear. This is where discipline becomes valuable. Discipline gives you a steady hand when your feelings are uncertain. It reminds you that discomfort is temporary, but the results of avoidance can last much longer. A strong mind does not ask, "How can I avoid every hard feeling?" It asks, "What is this discomfort trying to teach me?" That question changes everything. A difficult conversation may be showing you where honesty is needed. A new responsibility may be showing you where your confidence must grow. A season of change may be showing you what in your life is no longer working. When you approach discomfort as information instead of punishment, your mind becomes wiser. You stop fearing every hard moment and start learning from it. There is great value in becoming familiar with uncertainty. Many people wait for life to feel stable before they move forward, but certainty is often built after action, not before it. You may not know exactly how a new path will unfold. You may not know whether your effort will be rewarded immediately. You may not know how others will respond. That is fine. A mature person does not require perfect clarity to begin. He learns to take the next step with a clear purpose, even when the full route is hidden. This kind of courage is quiet, but it is powerful. If you want to train your mind to welcome uncomfortable change, start by noticing your first reaction to discomfort. Do you complain instantly? Do you shut down? Do you distract yourself? Do you become angry? Do you begin looking for a reason to stop? These reactions are not your final identity, but they are clues. They show you how your mind has been trained so far. Once you see the pattern, you can begin to retrain it. The goal is not to suppress every feeling. The goal is to respond with greater strength and less panic. One practical way to build this skill is to stay present when discomfort rises. Do not immediately escape into noise. Do not rush to numb the feeling. Sit with it long enough to understand it. Sometimes the discomfort passes once you begin the task. Sometimes it becomes lighter when you stop feeding fear with attention. Often the mind makes change look harder than it is. The more you remain steady, the more you teach yourself that you can handle more than you first believed. Another powerful practice is to begin welcoming small forms of discomfort on purpose. Take the harder route sometimes. Wake up when you said you would. Speak honestly when silence would be easier. Finish the task before you relax. Spend time in quiet instead of constant entertainment. Choose the action that supports your growth instead of the one that simply protects your comfort. These moments may seem minor, but they train your nervous system to stop panicking every time something feels unfamiliar. Over time, your mind learns that discomfort does not always mean danger. You also need to stop romanticizing the version of yourself that only functions in comfort. That version may feel easier to live with, but it often keeps your life shallow. If you only perform when conditions are pleasant, then your potential stays limited. Real strength appears when you can remain faithful to your values in conditions that are inconvenient, tiring, or unclear. That is when your mind becomes dependable. That is when your life begins to carry weight. That is when other people can feel the difference in how you show up. A useful habit is to ask yourself before difficult moments, what would a stronger version of me do right now? That question pulls your attention away from fear and toward responsibility. It shifts the focus from what feels easy to what is worth doing. You may not always feel ready to choose the better path, but you can still choose it. Each time you do, your mind learns that discomfort is not the boss. It is simply part of the process. You must also be careful with the stories you tell yourself about change. Do not say, "I am bad at this," when you are only new to it. Do not say, "This is too much," when you are actually being stretched. Do not say, "I cannot handle uncertainty," when the truth is that you have not practiced handling it yet. Language shapes expectation. Expectation shapes behavior. If you speak about change as though it is a threat, your mind will resist it more. If you speak about it as a necessary stage of growth, you will begin to approach it with more strength. There is a serious lesson here. Every level of growth asks you to leave something behind. It may be an old habit, it may be a worn-out mindset, it may be a need for constant approval, it may be a lifestyle built around convenience. Change becomes uncomfortable because it demands a release. But releasing the old does not mean losing yourself. It means making room for a stronger self to emerge. The discomfort is not proof that you are failing. It is often proof that you are no longer willing to stay where you were. When change becomes difficult, do not rush to escape it. Slow down and examine what is really being asked of you. Are you being asked to trust more, to care less about approval, to become more disciplined, to be more honest, to let go of a habit that has outlived its usefulness? The more clearly you understand the demand, the less intimidating it becomes. Clarity gives you direction. Direction reduces fear. Fear loses strength when the mind can see what must be done. A person who welcomes uncomfortable change becomes harder to break and easier to grow. He stops treating pressure like a curse and begins seeing it as training. He knows that every challenge is shaping something in him. His patience deepens. His judgment improves. His character becomes more solid. He starts to see that discomfort is not always trying to destroy him. Sometimes it is revealing what he is capable of becoming. So the next time change feels uneasy, do not retreat too quickly. Stay with it long enough to learn from it. Keep moving even when the new path feels strange. Trust that the discomfort will not now stay forever, but the strength you build through it can remain. Your future depends on your willingness to adapt. Your peace depends on your ability to stay calm while life reshapes you. Your growth depends on whether you can tell the difference between pain that harms you and pressure that builds you. Train your mind to welcome the hard moments. Respect them. Learn from them. Move through them with discipline. That is how you become someone who does not collapse when life changes. That is how you become someone who grows stronger because of it. Chapter 5. Challenge beliefs that keep your potential trapped. The prison that limits most people is not built by the world around them, but by the beliefs they keep repeating inside their own minds. A person can have opportunity and still remain stuck. A person can have intelligence and still avoid growth. A person can have talent and still live far below potential. Why does this happen? Because beliefs shape behavior long before results appear. What you believe about yourself influences what you attempt, what you tolerate, what you avoid, and what you expect from life. Many people spend years trying to change their habits while protecting the beliefs that created those habits in the first place. This is why real transformation requires more than action. It requires examination. You must question the ideas you accepted without proof. You must challenge the internal rules you built during painful seasons. You must ask whether the beliefs guiding your choices are helping you grow or quietly keeping you small. Not every belief arrives through logic. Many arrive through experience. A child who was ignored may begin believing his voice does not matter. Someone who failed repeatedly may begin believing effort is dangerous. A person who experienced rejection may begin believing closeness always leads to disappointment. Over time, these beliefs stop feeling like opinions and start feeling like facts. That is where the problem begins. When a belief becomes invisible, it starts controlling behavior without resistance. You may not even notice these hidden beliefs because they often sound normal. They sound like this. People like me never succeed. I always lose focus. I cannot trust myself. It is too late for me. I am not naturally confident. Others are built for success, but I am not. These statements may feel true because they have been repeated many times, but repetition does not create truth. Familiarity does not equal accuracy. A dangerous belief is powerful because it rarely announces itself. It appears quietly in everyday decisions. It convinces you to stay silent when you should speak. It pushes you toward comfort when challenge would help you grow. It lowers your standards before you even begin. It trains you to expect less from yourself. Eventually, your life starts matching your belief. Then the belief feels confirmed. This creates a cycle. You believe less, you attempt less, you achieve less, and then you use the result as proof that the belief was correct. Breaking this cycle requires courage because challenging your beliefs can feel uncomfortable. The mind often protects old thinking because old thinking feels predictable. Even limiting beliefs can become familiar companions. But growth asks difficult questions. It asks whether your current beliefs deserve your loyalty. It asks whether your assumptions have been tested. It asks whether the story you tell yourself is helping you become stronger or keeping you dependent on old fears. Start by becoming curious about your reactions. When you avoid something important, ask why. When you hesitate, ask what thought appeared before the hesitation. When you doubt yourself, pause and listen closely. What exactly are you believing in that moment? Do not rush. Observe. A person who learns to examine his own thinking gains a form of freedom many never experience. For example, imagine someone believes they are bad at discipline. Because of this belief, they expect inconsistency. They stop trusting their ability to follow through. They begin important tasks with hidden doubt. Then when they fail to remain consistent, they say, "This is who I am." But perhaps the real issue was never identity. Perhaps the issue was a lack of systems, practice, or patience. The belief created the outcome before effort had a chance to grow. This is why you must separate facts from conclusions. A fact says you struggled with consistency in the past. A conclusion says you will always struggle. The fact is useful. The conclusion is limiting. Facts help you understand reality. Limiting conclusions turn temporary experiences into permanent labels. Be careful with permanent labels. They can become walls around your potential. A mature person learns to replace harsh certainty with honest curiosity. Instead of saying, "I cannot change," ask, "What skills have I not developed yet?" Instead of saying, "I always fail," ask, "What patterns keep repeating and how can I interrupt them?" Curiosity opens doors. Defeat closes them before movement begins. You must also challenge beliefs about discomfort. Many people unconsciously believe that hard things should feel wrong. As soon as effort becomes difficult, they assume something is off. But meaningful progress often asks for patience, repetition, and temporary frustration. If your belief says growth should always feel smooth, you may quit before improvement appears. Strong minds learn to expect periods of uncertainty without turning uncertainty into proof of failure. There are beliefs hidden inside relationships too. Some people believe they must shrink to be accepted. Some believe they must constantly prove their worth. Some believe conflict means rejection. These beliefs affect the way they communicate, the boundaries they set, and the treatment they tolerate. Without awareness, a person can spend years repeating painful patterns while wondering why life feels heavy. Look at the relationships in your life and ask difficult questions. Do you stay silent to avoid disappointing others? Do you overextend yourself because you believe your value depends on usefulness? Do you remain in unhealthy situations because part of you believes better is unavailable? The answers may reveal beliefs operating beneath the surface. Beliefs about time are also important. Some people quietly believe they are already behind in life. They compare their path to others and begin living with hidden urgency or resignation. They stop learning because they think opportunity has passed. But growth does not follow one schedule. Human beings change at different ages, through different experiences, and under different conditions. A person who believes it is too late may stop building the future long before the future stops being possible. Challenge any belief that tells you your story has already ended while you are still breathing. Your mind records evidence every day. If you want new beliefs, you need new evidence. Empty affirmations without action rarely create deep change. Real confidence develops when you prove something to yourself repeatedly. Keep one promise to yourself, then keep another. Finish one difficult task. Speak honestly once where you usually hide. Practice one skill long enough to improve. These experiences create evidence. Evidence changes identity more deeply than wishful thinking. This means your daily choices are not only shaping outcomes, they are shaping beliefs. Every action quietly answers a question. Can I rely on myself? Am I capable of learning? Can I handle discomfort? Can I recover from mistakes? Your behavior becomes proof. Over time, the mind starts adjusting what it believes. Another important step is learning not to worship your first thoughts. Thoughts appear automatically. Beliefs become stronger through agreement. There is a difference. You are not required to believe every fearful prediction your mind produces. You are not required to obey every insecure thought. Mental strength grows when you pause before acceptance. Imagine your mind says, "You will embarrass yourself if you try." Instead of obeying, ask for evidence. Has every attempt ended badly? Have you survived difficult situations before? Could growth require imperfect beginnings? This questioning process weakens automatic fear. It teaches your mind that old assumptions must earn trust rather than receive it immediately. The strongest people are not those who never doubt. They are often people who learned to examine doubt without surrendering to it. There may come a point when challenging old beliefs feels lonely. Growth changes how you see yourself. When your standards rise, familiar excuses lose comfort. You begin noticing where you once settled. That awareness can create tension because your former identity may resist change. Part of you wants safety. Another part wants expansion. This conflict is normal. It does not mean something is broken. It means something is evolving. Stay patient during this stage. A tree does not become stronger because someone talks about growth around it. It grows because conditions force deeper roots. Human beings are similar. Your deeper beliefs change through repeated encounters with truth, through effort, through reflection, through acting differently long enough that your mind can no longer deny the evidence. Eventually, you begin noticing subtle shifts. You stop speaking about yourself with constant limitation. You stop assuming weakness before effort begins. You stop defining your future by your worst moments. The inner dialogue changes, not because you ignored reality, but because you examined it more honestly. This kind of freedom is powerful. Imagine waking up without carrying outdated beliefs that quietly reduce your expectations. Imagine making decisions based on possibility combined with responsibility rather than fear disguised as certainty. Imagine trusting your ability to learn instead of demanding perfection before movement. This does not create arrogance. It creates openness. Openness allows growth. The person you become depends partly on the beliefs you protect and partly on the beliefs you challenge. Some beliefs deserve reinforcement because they support courage, patience, integrity, and resilience. Others deserve removal because they were built during seasons of pain and no longer belong in your future. You owe it to yourself to examine what lives in your mind. Question the assumptions that tell you to remain small. Question the voice that expects failure before effort. Question the idea that your past must control your next chapter. Question every belief that asks you to stay trapped while calling it safety. Because the moment you begin challenging limiting beliefs with truth, discipline, and evidence, your potential starts breathing again. And a person whose potential is no longer trapped becomes difficult to stop. Chapter 6. Strengthen resilience through consistent, honest self-reflection. Resilience begins the day you stop lying to yourself and start seeing your life clearly. A person becomes stronger in ways that last when he learns how to face his own actions, without panic and without excuses. That is what honest self-reflection does. It gives you a clear mirror, not a harsh one, not a flattering one, a clear one, and clarity is one of the greatest strengths a human being can develop. Without it, you may keep moving but never truly improving. You may stay busy but still repeat the same mistakes. You may survive hard seasons but never learn how to grow from them. Honest reflection turns experience into wisdom. It helps you stop wasting pain and start using it. Most people avoid looking at themselves too closely because they fear what they might find. They fear regret. They fear disappointment. They fear the thought that they have wasted time. But the real danger is not what you see when you reflect. The real danger is refusing to look at all. A person who never reflects keeps stepping on the same ground and wondering why the path never changes. If you want resilience, then you need the courage to study your own life with truth. Honest self-reflection is not about attacking yourself. It is not about replaying every failure until you feel small. That is not strength. That is self-punishment. Real reflection is calmer than that. It asks simple and serious questions. What happened? Why did it happen? What was under my control? What was not? What did I do well? What did I ignore? What lesson did I miss? What must change next time? These questions do something powerful. They separate emotion from understanding. They help you learn instead of just react. A resilient person does not pretend nothing hurts. He notices the hurt and still keeps his mind steady enough to learn from it. That is why reflection matters so much after a hard day or a hard season. It prevents pain from becoming meaningless. It helps you extract value from what was difficult. Without reflection, pain can leave you bitter. With reflection, pain can leave you wiser. There is a difference between feeling bad about a mistake and learning from a mistake. Feeling bad can happen in a moment. Learning takes honesty. If you lost focus, then ask what pulled your attention away. If you failed to keep a promise, then ask what made you abandon it. If a relationship became strained, then ask what patterns you repeated. If you felt weak under pressure, then ask whether you prepared enough. These are not comfortable questions. But comfort rarely builds character. Truth does. The more honest you are with yourself, the less fragile you become. Fragile people need perfect conditions to feel okay. Resilient people know how to stand even when life feels uneven. That strength comes from repeated self-examination. When you reflect regularly, you stop being shocked by your own patterns. You begin to understand your triggers, your habits, and your blind spots. That understanding gives you room to respond more wisely, making reflection part of your daily life. It does not need to be complicated. At the end of the day, pause long enough to ask yourself what the day revealed. Did you act with discipline or drift into distraction? Did you speak with care or react too fast? Did you protect your time or give it away? Did you keep your standards or lower them for convenience? These moments of review may only take a few minutes, but they train your mind to stay awake to your own behavior. That awareness is the beginning of resilience. One reason reflection builds strength is that it keeps small problems from growing larger. Many serious failures begin as small ignored patterns. A little dishonesty becomes a habit. A little avoidance becomes a lifestyle. A little resentment becomes a heavy burden. A little self-neglect becomes a broken routine. Honest reflection catches these things early. It helps you correct course before damage spreads. That is one of the quiet benefits of wisdom. It saves time by preventing repeated waste. You do not need to wait for life to become painful before you start reflecting. You can build the habit now. When something goes well, ask why it worked. When something goes poorly, ask what you can improve. When you feel strong, ask what supports that strength. When you feel weak, ask what drains you. This habit makes your mind more disciplined. It keeps you from living on automatic. It teaches you to observe yourself like a student who wants to improve. Self-reflection also strengthens resilience because it builds trust with yourself. A person who reflects honestly begins to believe that he can handle the truth. That is a powerful shift. Many people are not weak because they lack ability. They are weak because they do not trust themselves to face reality, so they avoid the mirror. They avoid the hard answer. They avoid the quiet moment where they must admit that something needs to change. But once you prove to yourself that you can face the truth without collapsing, your confidence starts to deepen. The goal is not perfection. The goal is responsiveness. When you see a weakness, do not dramatize it, study it. When you notice a repeated error, do not turn it into identity, correct it. When you recognize a harmful pattern, do not excuse it, interrupt it. This is how resilience becomes practical. It is not just about enduring pressure. It is about learning from pressure so that the same pressure weakens you less in the future. There is also great power in keeping a written record of your reflections. Writing makes truth harder to ignore. It gives shape to thoughts that might otherwise remain vague. When you write down what happened and what you learned, you create a trail of your growth. Later you can look back and see how far you have come. You can notice which struggles repeat and which ones you have begun to master. That kind of evidence builds confidence. It shows you that change is real even when it feels slow. Honest reflection also helps you stay humble. Humility is not self-hatred, it is accuracy. It means seeing yourself clearly enough to know where you are strong and where you still need work. A humble person learns faster because he does not waste energy defending every flaw. He can admit when he is wrong. He can accept correction. He can improve without turning every lesson into a personal attack. This makes him more resilient because the truth does not threaten him, it guides him. You will sometimes discover during reflection that your biggest struggles are not outside you. They are inside your habits, your reactions, and your assumptions. That can be difficult to accept, but it is also empowering. Why? Because what is inside you can be trained. What is inside you can be improved. What is inside you can be shaped through repetition and honesty. This means you are not helpless, you are capable of growth. A resilient life is built by people who are willing to ask hard questions and stay long enough to answer them. They do not rush past discomfort. They do not hide from their own patterns. They sit still long enough to understand what their life is teaching them. That habit creates strength that does not break easily. It creates a mind that adjusts, a heart that learns, a character that does not collapse every time something goes wrong. So at the end of each day, give yourself a moment of truth. Not to criticize, not to overthink, to learn. Ask what you handled well. Ask what needs correction. Ask what drained your energy. Ask what gave you peace. Ask what your choices revealed about your priorities. Then carry the lesson forward. This is how you become stronger in a way that lasts. This is how resilience grows from the inside out. A person who reflects honestly no longer lives as a stranger to his own life. He understands himself better. He corrects himself sooner. He recovers faster. He grows wiser under pressure. And over time he becomes someone who can face life with steadiness because he has already learned how to face himself. Chapter 7. Replace familiar routines with intentional improvement daily. Your future changes the moment you stop living by routine and start living by intention. Many people wake up every day and move through the same actions without asking where those actions are leading. They follow familiar patterns because familiar patterns require less effort. The mind likes what it already knows. The body repeats what it has practiced. It's become weeks. Weeks become years. Then one day a person looks at his life and wonders why growth feels distant. The answer is often uncomfortable. Growth remained distant because routine became stronger than purpose. Not every routine is harmful. Some routines create stability. Some protect health. Some help you stay focused. But there is a difference between routines that support your future and routines that quietly preserve your old limitations. The difficult part is that harmful routines rarely announce themselves. They arrive in ordinary forms, delaying important work, spending too much time distracted, ignoring personal development, reacting the same way to pressure, avoiding difficult conversations, repeating habits that no longer deserve a place in your life. Familiarity can become dangerous when it stops you from asking questions. If you never examine your routines, you may confuse repetition with progress. You may believe movement equals growth. But being busy and becoming better are not the same thing. A person can stay active while remaining unchanged. Intentional improvement asks more from you. It asks you to notice what your days are building. Your life is shaped by ordinary decisions more than dramatic moments. One conversation handled differently, 1 hour used with purpose, one distraction removed, one better response under pressure. These things seem small while they happen, but repeated over time they begin to redesign who you are. This is why daily improvement matters. It is not about chasing perfection. It is about refusing to become unconscious inside your own habits. Intentional improvement starts with awareness. Look closely at your current routines, not with judgment, with honesty. How do you begin your day? What fills your attention? What habits consume energy without giving anything meaningful back? Which actions leave you feeling stronger? Which ones leave you scattered? You cannot replace what you refuse to examine. Many people believe change requires massive effort. Sometimes change begins with noticing. Awareness interrupts automatic behavior. The moment you see a pattern clearly, you create the possibility of choosing differently. Before that moment, the routine often controls you without resistance. Imagine someone who ends every difficult day by escaping into endless distraction. Over time, this routine becomes familiar. Stress arrives. Escape follows. The pattern repeats. Eventually, the person no longer asks whether there is a healthier response. The habit becomes invisible. But invisible habits still shape visible outcomes. This is why attention matters. You need to see your patterns before you can improve them. There is power in asking a simple question before any repeated behavior. Is this helping me become the person I want to be? That question can expose many unnecessary routines. It can reveal where comfort is replacing growth. It can show where convenience is slowly lowering your standards. Intentional improvement does not mean rejecting all comfort. It means choosing your comfort carefully. Rest has value. Enjoyment has value. Stillness has value. But unconscious repetition that weakens your future deserves examination. Wisdom comes from knowing the difference. One useful practice is replacing vague goals with specific daily standards. Saying you want a better life is broad. Deciding that you will read for 20 minutes each day is clear. Saying you want more discipline is uncertain. Deciding that you will finish important work before entertainment creates direction. Clarity reduces confusion. Confusion often protects old habits. The routines that shape your life deserve the same attention you would give to important decisions because they are. Important decisions repeated many times. A person who improves intentionally learns to become less reactive. He stops allowing mood to decide everything. He develops structures that support better choices. He understands that waiting for motivation can leave growth unstable. Instead, he builds systems. Small, dependable actions performed consistently. This creates steadiness. Steadiness may not appear exciting, but it is powerful. A steady person becomes trustworthy to himself. He knows he can continue even when enthusiasm changes. That reliability strengthens confidence. Confidence built through evidence lasts longer than confidence built through temporary emotion. There will be resistance when replacing familiar routines. The old patterns often feel easier because they require less adjustment. Your mind may suggest returning to what is known. This is normal. Change often creates tension before it creates freedom. The presence of resistance does not mean you should stop. It may simply mean something deeper is shifting. Think about how many choices in life happen without awareness. The words you use with yourself, the way you respond to setbacks, the way you manage time, the standards you accept. These become routines too. Improvement is not limited to visible habits. It includes internal habits, mental habits, emotional habits. Perhaps your routine under pressure is self-criticism. Perhaps your routine after mistakes is avoidance. Perhaps your routine during uncertainty is assuming the worst. These patterns deserve attention because they influence how you experience life. Replacing them requires patience. A new response may feel unfamiliar at first. Continue anyway. If your usual response is harshness, practice measured honesty. If your usual response is delay, practice immediate small action. If your usual response is helplessness, practice asking what remains within your control. These changes train the mind toward greater stability. Intentional improvement also requires protecting your environment. Environments encourage certain behaviors. A disorganized space can increase distraction. Constant noise can weaken focus. Endless access to interruption can reduce deep thinking. You do not need perfect conditions, but your surroundings should support the life you are trying to build whenever possible. There is another truth many avoid. Some routines survive because they provide identity. You may continue certain patterns because they feel connected to who you have been. Leaving them behind can feel uncomfortable because change sometimes asks you to release familiar versions of yourself. This is part of growth. Not every old pattern deserves loyalty. You are allowed to become different from who you used to be. You are allowed to stop repeating behaviors that no longer fit your future. You are allowed to build routines that reflect who you are becoming rather than who you were. This process requires patience because lasting improvement rarely happens overnight. Human beings often underestimate the effect of repeated effort. A small adjustment maintained over months can create dramatic differences. The difficulty is that progress may be invisible at first. Continue anyway. Seeds grow beneath the surface before visible signs appear. One helpful habit is ending the day with a brief review. Ask yourself what actions moved you forward. Ask where you drifted toward old routines. Ask what one adjustment could improve tomorrow. This practice keeps growth active. It prevents days from blending together without awareness. Improvement becomes easier when you stop demanding perfection. Perfection often creates pressure that leads to quitting. Progress asks something more sustainable. Return after mistakes. Adjust after setbacks. Learn without turning every failure into identity. Consistency survives because it allows correction. A person committed to intentional improvement becomes more awake to his own life. He notices where energy goes. He notices what weakens attention. He notices what builds strength. Over time, his choices become more aligned with his values. This alignment creates peace because internal conflict begins to lessen. The goal is not to become rigid. The goal is to become deliberate. Deliberate people do not leave important parts of life to chance. They examine, they adjust, they improve. Their routines become tools rather than cages. Imagine reaching a point where your ordinary days support your growth instead of slowing it. Where your habits strengthen focus instead of scattering it. Where your choices create momentum rather than regret. This is possible, but it requires willingness. Willingness to question what is familiar. Willingness to replace what no longer works. Willingness to accept that improvement is built through daily attention. The strongest transformations often begin quietly. One decision, one adjustment, one routine changed with purpose, then another, then another. Eventually, the life that once felt distant begins appearing in your daily actions. And that is where meaningful change always starts. Not in grand promises, not in occasional bursts of motivation. In the repeated decision to improve on purpose, while others continue living by default. Chapter 8. Commit to actions your future self needs. The strongest life is built by the choices you make before the consequences arrive. Most people wait until pressure becomes unbearable before they finally change. They wait until the bills pile up before they respect money. They wait until their body feels weak before they care about health. They wait until trust is broken before they value honesty. They wait until regret becomes heavy before they start taking life seriously. But the future always arrives in the same way, quietly, daily, through the actions you choose now. That is why real growth requires a different way of living. You must begin acting with your future self in mind. This is not about fantasy. It is not about imagining a perfect life and hoping it appears. It is about responsibility. It is about understanding that the person you become later is being shaped by what you do today. Every effort you make now becomes either a gift or a burden for the version of you that has to live with the outcome. That future self will inherit your discipline or your neglect, your strength or your weakness, your preparation or your excuses. Nothing is wasted. Everything leaves a mark. A person who truly cares about his future does not only ask what feels good right now. He asks what will matter tomorrow, next month, and next year. That question changes the way he lives. It changes how he spends time. It changes how he handles temptation. It changes what he tolerates. It changes how seriously he takes small decisions. A future-focused mind becomes harder to manipulate because it sees beyond the moment. One of the clearest signs of maturity is the ability to do what is useful, even when it is inconvenient. Your future self needs actions that may not look exciting in the present. He needs you to sleep with more discipline. He needs you to save energy instead of wasting it. He needs you to finish work instead of drifting away from it. He needs you to keep promises that matter, even when nobody is watching. He needs you to build habits that protect your mind. He needs you to stop living as if the future is someone else's problem. Many people live in a way that quietly steals from tomorrow. They borrow from their focus, their health, their time, and their peace. They spend what should have been saved. They delay what should have been handled. They comfort themselves now and leave the debt for later. But future pain is often the result of present avoidance. That is why self-respect and future respect are closely connected. If you truly respect your future, you will stop treating today like it has no consequences. Start by asking a simple question before making choices. Would my future self thank me for this or suffer because of it? That question is powerful because it cuts through impulse. It makes you pause. It forces a more honest view of your behavior. If the choice is a good one, it will still be good tomorrow. If the choice is a weak one, time will only expose it more clearly. A person who learns to think this way becomes less controlled by cravings and more guided by values. Your future self needs consistency more than intensity. Big moments can inspire change, but steady action creates it. A burst of effort feels impressive, but repeated effort builds identity. This means the small decisions matter more than many people realize. The meal you choose, the hour you wake up, the task you finish, the conversation you avoid or face, the distraction you refuse. The quiet moment where you decide to keep going instead of quitting. These moments look ordinary, but they are laying the foundation for the life you will later live inside. There is a deep form of kindness in preparing for your future. It is kind to your future mind when you train it now. It is kind to your future body when you care for it now. It is kind to your future peace when you handle responsibilities now. It is kind to your future confidence when you practice keeping your word now. Many people think kindness is only about how you treat others. But one of the most overlooked forms of kindness is the way you treat the person you are becoming. The future self is not a stranger. He is you. He will carry the results of the discipline or neglect you choose today. When you understand that, your actions gain weight. Even boring tasks become meaningful. Even small sacrifices become valuable. You begin to see that what you do in private is shaping the quality of your public life later. The work you do when no one praises you may be the very thing that saves you from regret. This mindset also protects you from short-term deception. A lot of harmful choices are attractive because they only show one side of the story. They promise ease. They promise relief. They promise pleasure without cost. But any choice that weakens your future is not a gift. It is a delay with interest. The future version of you will pay for what the present version refuses to face. That is why wisdom is so important. Wisdom sees beyond the immediate feeling and measures the long-term result. Your future self needs more than ambition. He needs proof. He needs evidence that you are trustworthy. He needs evidence that you can stay committed. He needs evidence that you can delay comfort when purpose calls. This evidence is built through repetition. Each time you act in alignment with your values, you strengthen the bond between who you are now and who you are trying to become. You may not always feel motivated to act for your future self. That is normal. Motivation rises and falls, but responsibility can stay steady even when motivation fades. This is where discipline becomes essential. Discipline says, I do this because it matters, not because I feel perfect. Discipline says my future deserves more than temporary moods. Discipline says the long term is worth the effort. That mindset creates strength that emotion alone cannot provide. A practical way to live for your future self is to leave less unfinished work behind at the end of each day. Finish what you can, clear the clutter, respond to what needs response, move the important task forward. When you end your day with less drift, your future self wakes up with less weight. This may seem simple, but simple actions repeated daily create a stable life. It also helps to imagine your future self in a real and honest way, not as a fantasy figure, as a person living with the results of your current habits. Picture him carrying the benefits of your discipline or the cost of your neglect. That image can sharpen your focus. It can make choices feel more immediate. It can remind you that the work you avoid today does not disappear. It simply waits. Another important truth is that your future self needs courage from you now. Courage to begin. Courage to continue. Courage to say no when a harmful habit is calling. Courage to choose the path that feels harder but leads somewhere better. Courage to accept that growth may require you to become less comfortable before you become more free. This is not punishment. It is investment. Every brave action now reduces future regret. You do not have to solve your entire life at once. That pressure can become overwhelming. Focus on what your future self needs from this day. Does he need more order, more honesty, more effort, more restraint, more rest, more planning, more follow-through? Give him one useful thing today, then do it again tomorrow. A future built this way becomes stronger because it is being shaped by intention instead of accident. There is a quiet dignity in living this way. You stop treating your days like empty space. You begin treating them like building material. You understand that the life ahead is not waiting to appear on its own. It is being assembled one choice at a time. That realization can change a person deeply. It can make him more serious without making him miserable. It can make him more disciplined without making him cold. It can make him more focused without taking away his humanity. Your future self is asking for one thing from you now. Do not abandon him. Do not hand him your unfinished patterns and call it normal. Do not pass him your distractions and call it rest. Do not pass him your fear and call it caution. Give him strength. Give him structure. Give him the kind of effort that builds trust across time. Every day is a chance to act like the person your future will depend on. Use it well. Move with purpose. Choose with care. Build with patience. And remember that the strongest future is not found by accident. It is earned by the person who decides to live today like tomorrow matters. Chapter 9. Outgrow relationships that reward your weaker version. Your life will never rise beyond the level of relationships that quietly encourage you to stay the same. Many people focus on habits, discipline, and mindset, yet they ignore one of the strongest forces shaping their growth: the people they spend time with. Relationships influence how you think, what you tolerate, and what you believe about yourself. Some relationships inspire growth, others reward comfort. And the dangerous ones reward your weaker version while making it feel normal. A weaker version of you is not always obvious. It is the version that delays responsibility, avoids discomfort, lowers standards, and chooses ease over effort. Some relationships do not challenge this version, they support it. They laugh with it, they normalize it, they even protect it. At first, it may feel like comfort, but over time, comfort becomes limitation. If no one around you expects more from you, it becomes easier to expect less from yourself. Growth often requires uncomfortable honesty. You have to notice where your environment is reinforcing patterns you aren't trying to outgrow. For example, if you are trying to become disciplined, but spend most of your time with people who avoid effort, your environment will constantly pull you back. If you are trying to become focused, but your conversations revolve around distraction, your attention will weaken. If you are trying to become serious about your goals, but your circle treats everything as entertainment, your ambition will slowly fade. This is not about blaming others. It is about understanding influence. Human beings adjust to the energy around them. Over time, you start to mirror the expectations of the people closest to you. If those expectations are low, your standards slowly lower. If those expectations are inconsistent, your discipline becomes inconsistent. If those expectations reward avoidance, you begin to avoid too. One of the hardest truths in personal growth is that not every relationship is designed to support your evolution. Some relationships are connected to your past identity. They were formed during earlier versions of you. They may have made sense when you were less aware, less disciplined, or less focused. But growth changes direction, and when direction changes, some connections begin to pull you backward without intending harm. Outgrowing relationships does not mean becoming cold or disrespectful. It means becoming honest about alignment. Do these relationships support who you are becoming, or only who you used to be? Do they challenge you to rise or comfort you into staying the same? Do they bring out your discipline or your distraction? These questions are not about judgment. They are about clarity. A relationship that rewards your weaker version often feels easy in the beginning. There is no pressure, no challenge, no expectation to improve. You can stay in familiar patterns without accountability. You can avoid responsibility without question. You can repeat old habits without interruption. But ease is not always growth. Sometimes ease is stagnation disguised as peace. Real growth-oriented relationships feel different. They may not always be comfortable, but they create movement. They remind you of your goals when you forget. They encourage you when you fall behind. They do not allow you to permanently settle into excuses. They reflect your potential back to you, even when you temporarily ignore it. These relationships do not just accept you as you are. They also respect who you are capable of becoming. To outgrow relationships that reward your weaker self, you must first become aware of emotional dependency. Many people stay connected to environments that weaken them because they fear discomfort or loneliness. The idea of stepping away can feel heavy, but staying in environments that continuously lower your standards creates a deeper cost over time. That cost is the slow loss of direction, confidence, and self-respect. Awareness is the first step. Observe how you feel after certain interactions. Do you feel more focused or more distracted? Do you feel more motivated or more passive? Do you feel clearer about your goals or more disconnected from them? Your emotional state after repeated interactions often reveals whether a relationship supports your growth or holds you in place. Another important step is learning to set internal boundaries before external ones. External boundaries are actions like reducing time spent or changing communication patterns. Internal boundaries are decisions about what you allow to influence your thinking. Even if you cannot immediately change your environment, you can begin changing how much power it has over your identity. You can choose not to absorb limiting conversations as truth. You can choose not to let low expectations become your standard. As you grow, you may notice tension appearing in some relationships. That is natural. When one person changes, the dynamic shifts. People who are used to your old version may not immediately understand your new direction. Some may try to pull you back into familiar behavior. Others may feel uncomfortable with your change because it highlights their own stagnation. This is where clarity becomes important. Growth will always create some distance from environments that cannot evolve with you. You do not need to force harsh separation from everyone, but you do need to become intentional about where your energy goes. Time is not just spent, it is invested. And where you invest your time will influence who you become. If your time consistently reinforces distraction, your focus will weaken. If your time consistently reinforces responsibility, your discipline will grow. It is also important to recognize that outgrowing relationships is not an emotional rejection of people. It is a recognition of different paths. Some people are not meant to walk the same direction as you forever. Respect can remain even when proximity changes. Gratitude can remain even when distance increases. What matters is that you do not sacrifice your growth to maintain comfort in connections that no longer support your development. A strong person does not wait for others to approve of his growth. He accepts that change may create discomfort in his environment. He understands that not everyone will stay aligned with his direction, and he chooses growth anyway. This requires emotional strength. But that strength is built through action, not avoidance. There is a quiet transformation that happens when you begin to distance yourself from environments that reward weakness. At first, you may feel a sense of emptiness. That is natural. Old patterns create familiarity even when they are limiting. But over time, space begins to open. In that space, new habits form, new clarity develops, new confidence grows. You begin to notice that your thoughts become sharper, your decisions become more intentional, your energy becomes more stable. You also begin to realize something important. Growth often requires solitude in the early stages. Not isolation forever, but space for your identity to stabilize. Without constant influence pulling you backward, you begin to hear your own thoughts more clearly. You begin to recognize what you actually want, instead of what you have been conditioned to accept. As your standards rise, your relationships will naturally begin to reorganize. Some connections will deepen because they support your growth. Others will fade because they cannot keep up with your direction. This process is not something to fear. It is part of becoming more aligned with your purpose. A life built on truth will always reorganize itself around that truth. The key is not to become harsh, but to become honest. Do not force yourself to remain in environments that consistently weaken your discipline. Do not ignore patterns that keep pulling you away from your goals. Do not confuse loyalty with self-abandonment. True loyalty to your growth means making decisions that protect your future, even when they feel uncomfortable in the present. There is a version of you waiting on the other side of these decisions. A version that thinks more clearly, acts more deliberately, and respects himself more deeply. That version cannot fully emerge while you remain tied to environments that constantly pull you backward. Something must change for something new to appear. So begin by observing your relationships with honesty. Notice what they bring out in you. Notice what they reinforce. Notice whether they support your discipline or your distraction. Then begin making small but deliberate adjustments. Spend less time where you lose direction. Spend more time where you gain clarity. Speak less in spaces that encourage weakness. Speak more in spaces that encourage growth over time. These decisions will reshape not only your environment but your identity. Because who you become is strongly influenced by what you allow to stay close to you. Outgrowing relationships that reward your weaker version is not about losing people. It is about finding yourself. Chapter 10. Become someone who refuses comfortable stagnation forever. The moment you refuse comfortable stagnation, your entire life begins to move in a new direction. Most people do not fail because they never had the chance to grow. They fail because they slowly accept a life that feels leads nowhere. Comfortable stagnation is one of the most dangerous states a person can live in. It does not feel painful at first. In fact, it often feels calm. Days pass without pressure. Nothing feels urgent. Nothing feels demanding. But beneath that calm surface, progress quietly stops. And when progress stops for too long, life begins to shrink without warning. Comfortable stagnation is tricky because it does not look like failure. It looks like normal living. You wake up, you go through familiar routines, you avoid major problems, you keep things stable. On the surface, everything seems fine, but stability without growth slowly turns into limitation. A life that does not expand eventually becomes a life that repeats itself. And repetition without improvement leads to quiet dissatisfaction. To refuse comfortable stagnation forever is not about living in constant struggle. It is about choosing movement over passivity. It is about choosing awareness over automatic living. It is about choosing progress over emotional comfort when the two are in conflict. A person who commits to growth understands that discomfort is not always a signal to stop. Sometimes it is a signal that something important is developing. Many people reach a point in life where they stop challenging themselves. They become familiar with their routines, their thoughts, and their limits. They stop asking difficult questions. They stop testing their abilities. They stop stepping into situations where they might not immediately succeed. Slowly, their world becomes smaller, not because opportunities disappear, but because their willingness to pursue them decreases. Comfort becomes a habit. And habits shape identity. If you want to break free from stagnation, you must first become aware of where it exists in your life. Where have you stopped pushing yourself? Where have you accepted less than you are capable of? Where have you chosen ease over improvement repeatedly? These questions are not meant to create guilt. They are meant to create clarity. You cannot change what you refuse to see. Refusing stagnation begins with a decision to value growth more than comfort. That does not mean rejecting rest or peace. It means refusing to confuse comfort with progress. Rest restores energy. Growth uses energy. Both are necessary, but when comfort becomes the default goal, growth begins to disappear quietly. A person committed to growth develops a different relationship with effort. Effort is no longer seen as punishment. It becomes a signal that life is being shaped intentionally. Instead of avoiding difficult tasks, he begins to recognize them as opportunities to expand capability. Every challenge becomes a chance to strengthen something that was previously weak. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is learning to interrupt automatic behavior. Comfortable stagnation survives on routine without awareness. You wake up and do what you did yesterday. You think the same thoughts. You follow the same patterns. You make the same small choices. Nothing changes because nothing is questioned. To break this cycle, you must begin inserting awareness into your actions. Pause and ask whether what you are doing is building your future or simply repeating your past. Growth does not always require dramatic action. Sometimes it requires subtle refusal, refusing to stay in a habit that no longer benefits you, refusing to avoid responsibility, refusing to accept low effort from yourself, refusing to let days pass without meaning. These small refusals gradually shift the direction of your life. There will be moments when comfort feels stronger than ambition. In those moments, stagnation tries to present itself as safety. It tells you to stay where things are predictable. It tells you not to risk discomfort. It tells you that stability is enough. But stability without progress slowly becomes limitation. A life that never stretches begins to feel heavy, even if it looks calm from the outside. A person who grows consistently learns to act, even when comfort pulls in the opposite direction. He understands that discipline is not about forcing himself into suffering. It is about choosing meaningful effort over meaningless ease. He begins to recognize that his future is shaped more by what he resists than what he desires. Refusing stagnation also requires honesty about personal excuses. Excuses often disguise themselves as reasonable explanations. You may tell yourself that you are too busy, too tired, or not ready. But beneath those statements is often avoidance of discomfort. When you learn to see excuses clearly, they lose their power. You begin to respond to them instead of obeying them. A life of movement requires small daily commitments that accumulate over time. Reading instead of drifting, finishing instead of delaying, practicing instead of avoiding, thinking instead of reacting. These actions may seem simple, but their repetition builds momentum. Momentum is what pulls a person out of stagnation and into progress. One of the most important skills in this process is the ability to restart quickly after slipping. Stagnation often grows when people believe that one mistake defines everything. They break consistency, feel discouraged, and return fully to old habits. But growth-minded people understand that setbacks are not permanent unless they are repeated. They correct quickly and continue forward without turning errors into identity. Another key element is surrounding yourself with reminders of growth. This does not only mean people, it also means environments, content, and daily influences that reinforce forward movement. What you repeatedly see and hear shapes your expectations. If your environment normalizes growth, you begin to expect more from yourself. If it normalizes passivity, stagnation becomes easier to accept. Over time, refusing stagnation becomes part of your identity. You stop negotiating with comfort when it conflicts with progress. You begin to trust effort more than mood. You begin to trust action more than intention. You begin to measure your days not by how easy they felt, but by whether they moved you forward. This mindset changes how you see time. Time is no longer something to pass. It becomes something to use. Every day becomes a chance to either reinforce growth or reinforce limitation. There is no neutral ground. Even in rest, you remain aware of direction. A life that refuses stagnation is not always loud or dramatic. It is often quiet and steady. It is built through consistent choices that favor growth over comfort. It is shaped by repeated moments of discipline that no one else may notice. But over time, these quiet decisions create a life that feels different from the inside. You begin to notice that you no longer feel trapped in the same cycles. You respond differently to challenges. You recover faster from setbacks. You think more clearly under pressure. You act with more intention. These changes are not accidental. They are the result of refusing to remain where you were. The final stage of this transformation is understanding that stagnation is always optional. At any moment, you can choose a different response. You can choose a different action. You can choose a different level of effort. You are never completely locked into the past unless you continue repeating it. So the real question is simple. Will you continue to accept comfort that leads nowhere, or will you choose movement even when it demands effort? The answer to that question is not spoken once. It is lived daily, through action, through discipline, through awareness, through refusal to remain the same. And every time you choose growth over comfort, you step further away from stagnation and closer to the life you are capable of building.